on to happy hour, but you're not going to want to miss this discussion. I'm here with a bunch of OG hardcore miners and someone from Filecoin and IPFS. So these are people who are really knowledgeable about their fields, and man, some of the most brilliant minds when it comes to mining, truly. So to start us off, just for people who are not necessarily crypto curious but not that acquainted with crypto, I'm going to pick on Raymond first. Can you explain to the average person what is mining and why does it need to exist?
Okay, well, good question. Yeah, what is mining? What is? I like to say it's pretty much like distributed computing. I mean, let's say Wells Fargo has a giant server, and all transactions that are recorded on that ledger over there is centralized by Wells Fargo. With Bitcoin mining, everybody can partake in Bitcoin mining by buying a server or running one of these mining machines, and that distributes the trust amongst everybody who runs these machines. You could run a Bitcoin network with one computer, but the more computers that you add on there actually increases security. And in a nutshell, that's how I do it.
So you're telling me that if I ran my single computer Bitcoin network, I could have an entire Bitcoin network to myself?
If you didn't connect it to the internet, sure.
You can. It's called the RegNet. You can run it on your machine. You can spin up like 2 or 3 Bitcoin nodes and have your own little network of Bitcoin.
Oh, that's awesome. So one of the things that's come up a lot recently is this controversy around the environmental impact of mining. And I'm sure that's something that you have to field a lot of questions about. So there's 2 parts to this question. Why, first, are people fixated on the environmental impact of cryptocurrency, but perhaps not other things? And then 2, what justifies the consumption of those resources for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, so I would say right now, so we use probably about 10 to 12 gigawatts of energy to the Bitcoin network does. When I say we, I'm mostly talking about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is probably 2 orders of magnitude larger than any other coin when it comes to environmental impact. So we'll just focus on that one. It uses about 10 gigawatts. The entirety of the Texas grid called ERCOT produces about 80 gigawatts. The entire United States is about 485 to 500 gigawatts. So on the grand scheme of things, like it's not actually really that much energy. It's just very measurable, meaning you can basically plug in. You know how many machines are plugged in. It's very easy to measure how much energy it uses. It's hard to say exactly how much energy this building uses or this city uses. So that's one of the reasons it's very much in the crosshairs. One of the good things to note, though, is that the Bitcoin mining is generally done with the cheapest energy, and right now the cheapest energy is most generally renewable, meaning like excess wind, solar, those sorts of things. That's where most of the energy for the Bitcoin network comes from, probably around to the order of 50 to 60%, and it's actually trending that way even more so. And one of the most exciting things about that is that it's actually incentivizing new renewable energy generation. The idea that you can use the solar power that you otherwise would have had to waste, or the wind power that you couldn't use, can now be monetized by mining Bitcoin. So anyway, I say this a lot. I say that Bitcoin mining is going to save the world, and I actually truly do believe that. It's going to incentivize this new energy paradigm here, not just in the United States but across the world, and with the United States actually kind of leading the charge. So. Anyway, that's kind of my canned answer for ESG, which is very much a topic when it comes to Bitcoin mining.
And if I could just add to that, Nick, I mean, very good point. So when a wind turbine is running, and let's say you want to turn it off, you have to either flip the blades in a position where it won't turn, or you have to lock the blades there, which is actually damaging the equipment, or you have to send it back into the grid. Right now in West Texas, the wind turbine companies have to pay ERCOT to put energy on the grid. So that's an excellent opportunity right there for Bitcoin miners to set up there and take that excess energy. It's creating a lot of new generation that wouldn't have been made in the first place. It's kind of catch-22. Let's say you want to build a town, but you don't have the energy to provide it. And the power generation companies are not going to create this solar power or wind until they have a customer. So Bitcoin miners come in, they can do a 3 to 5 year agreement, energy generation gets built out, maybe 3 to 5 years later, the energy company decides to kick out the Bitcoin miners, and now they have this excess energy that could be used for whatever. So excellent point. I think it's a great way to pay for new power generations of green energy.
So we're going to pivot a bit to another topic here. I know something that's been on the horizon for Ethereum is proof of work, and that's something that a lot of people are getting excited about. And I'm here on a panel of a lot of people who are really into mining, really into proof of stake, I'm sorry. Really into mining and really know a lot about proof of work. And I would like to know, what are the major trade-offs between proof of stake and proof of work? And in a world where, say, Ethereum or other cryptocurrencies start moving to proof of stake, why does proof of work still need to exist?
I will definitely grab that one.
All right.
Look, the major trade-off right now with proof of stake is that you lose your bootstrap mechanism. You are forcing new users to the network to trade their fiat or trade their other cryptocurrencies in order to get exposure to this new protocol. And that requires new users to basically speculate or gamble. It's not always the right trade-off. The beauty of proof of work is, yes, we have energy consumption, but guess what? You get a permissionless entry into the protocol. You get to get exposure to this community. For many people in Bitcoin, the first way that they got exposed to blockchain was through mining. We lose that in a proof of stake network. And there are plenty of countries that do not have exchange infrastructure that cannot get exposure to these new proof of stake protocols just because there's no legitimate way to purchase that crypto token. Now people like to say, oh, well, we can have grant programs that cryptocurrency foundations or protocol foundations can create to give people exposure to those tokens. But again, that's just a subset of new users that you're getting exposed to. You generally need to have some experience with that protocol or already be following it to get exposed to that. So I think a lot of these complaints about proof of work's energy consumption, people misunderstand that, yes, proof of stake's gonna be a little bit lighter, but in the grand scheme of things, we're going to lose that decentralized property that we built Bitcoin on.
Claire, I saw you grinning in response to this question.
Yeah, well, I actually just wanted to jump in on the environmental question earlier. I know I didn't realize you would change topics, but we actually are huge investors in the green movement. We have an initiative called Filecoin Green we're really proud of, which includes a number of areas. Number one is we are funding from the Filecoin Foundation a set of environmental grants. And this includes any kind of tooling you can do to better measure energy consumption on our network. It could be fun things like environmental screenings or funding creatives that are really thinking about environmental DAOs. I know some of the other panels earlier today talked about different kinds of DAOs out there. And so I think the other thing that is understated around what blockchain can do for the environment is the properties of blockchain that make it actually incredible to be a new opportunity for how other traditional stakeholders are looking at environmental measures today. So at least in our network, we right now can measure how much energy consumption, the 4,000 storage providers and growing all around the world, how much they're outputting at any point in time. So a lot of times people only report data and they might embellish that data after the fact when it's already out there. I think what's really great about the transparency with a number of crypto projects is all the data is there, all the proof is there. And so there's a lot more around reporting and new ways of really setting this benchmarks for the rest of the industry that we can do. There's also a lot of things that we are experimenting with. We recently are working with a storage provider in Amsterdam that has this incredible facility all powered by solar panels. It's something that you have to see in person. I actually visited it in person, and you can walk along the roof and you can just see this incredible data center that can host up to $30 million of data, all solar panel covered. And so these are kind of these mini experiments we're trying to think about. And I think what Nick said earlier was really interesting, because I think around energy consumption, it's really hard to compare apples to apples or apples to oranges, because every single blockchain project, there's such a different way of how mining operation is set up, the kinds of tooling that's used, what kind of proof system is being used. We use proof of storage. So it's really hard to do it, and for us, we usually say, if you look at big data centers, because we do distributed cloud computing, that might be, the North Star we're benchmarked against versus other purposes for other projects, right? So it's really hard because today, unfortunately, you can use data and manipulate it any way to tell a story, but we definitely want to make sure that we can tell facts as they are. I think there's so much that's out there with the transparency, like I said, around data with the blockchain that can really allow us to measure energy consumption like there never has been before, and also to also set new benchmarks of what ways that we can do things. We're also heavily participating in a number of initiatives. There is an initiative called the Crypto Client Alliance, where a number of crypto companies, including ourselves, we are very much committing to doing what we can for the environment. We also invested, the Filecoin ecosystem, we're investing in a $38 million fund for solar panel initiatives here in the US. And so there is multitudes of that I think you may not even see typical companies do that we are very much trying to get the conversation going.
Well, speaking of Filecoin, the traditional proof of work model has people outsourcing compute, right? So what are some other innovations that we're seeing in mining where people are finding other things that they can, in a decentralized way, gather these resources and put them towards some sort of collective good?
That sounds like a pool.
I'm uncertain. Are you saying like the heat that comes off of them, or what?
It could be heat, it could be, say, storage space, it could be wireless. I've seen a lot of different schemes where they're trying to use things that are similar to mining to aggregate different resources that were previously unused and put them towards some sort of decentralized or network use.
I have a funny story here. So when I was visiting our data center in Amsterdam by our partners, Decent, they wanted to turn their entire data floor space into a giant dance floor. They had set up rave lights all around. So, I mean, that's not a serious answer here, but I thought that was creative use of space. They were very determined to use the heat.
I mean, on the anecdote of it, actually.
I think I know. So there's a couple. There's Chia, which uses like storage on disks. We talked about Chia earlier, but unfortunately, it ruins your disks. I know Filecoin has proof of space-time. You've got varying types of proof of work. There's like hybrid proof of work, proof of stake. So like Decred does proof of work, proof of stake, where you basically inject the vote of the validators, which is the proof of stake mechanism, into the proof of work block. Thinking about some of the others, there was somebody that was trying to do proof of bandwidth, which I don't think is something you can really do because you're effectively just like relying on your ISP, which will cut you off from that pretty quickly. All of those are really not really using like a latent resource the way that energy is a latent resource, because those are all just derivatives of energy. Like storage is really just energy as well. All of those things are really just energy at the end of the day. And you're just moving where the constraint is. So like, for example, like with Chia, you're really just moving the constraint to the disks. With Filecoin, you're just moving the constraint to the disks. And so instead of it being an energy problem, it's more just like, I can't plug in enough disks, but if I could, it would become an energy problem again. So really, at the end of the day, it's really just energy. Like, really, when you have to provably waste this energy to demonstrate your economic incentive to be a valid actor in this ecosystem. So at the end of the day, even proof of stake starts to become kind of an energy problem. But anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of like skin in the game, which I see that. But we can maybe frame this in another way. I mean, right now, what you guys are doing, it's as if the Bitcoin miners were in 1993 laying underwater sea cables, setting up data centers, which we're doing, using electricity, converting that and setting up the infrastructure. Whereas, this Web3, I see it amazing. It's the next step. It's where the apps come in, where the actual usage comes in, and it all kind of goes together. And so, by setting up, maybe today we're doing mining, something else, but ultimately I think Bitcoin, the hardest money, probably the most decentralized, successful coin out there, is going to be the base layer, and then a layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, as you see what's happening in Lightning. Ultimately, I think that's part of the way we're going, and it helps with groups like this that are doing that.
So another thing is we have a lot of crypto-curious people here, obviously, and earlier it's been said multiple times that the best way to learn about this industry is by doing. So for the audience, what are some ways that people can get involved in crypto mining to really get a better understanding of cryptocurrency and blockchains?
At least for our network, we recently launched several accelerators. We have one here in the US. We are going to kick off one in Korea. It's called Espa, Enterprise Storage Provider Accelerator. And think of this as a boot camp. If you've wanted to be a storage provider for our network, we take you to Vegas. You will go through several, a week or two of a major boot camp. And the way to think about what it's like to be a storage provider for our network, I usually love using the Airbnb analogy, is very much like an Airbnb host. If you guys are familiar with Airbnb, people have extra space that they want to offer to other people for storage. And so it's very much like if you upgrade your space, there's the ability that you can store people at a more expensive price. So that's just a simple analogy to really drive down the economics of the different kinds of storage providers we have in every region around the world. We have people who invest a little bit, we have people who invest a lot, and some of them are running startups, some of them are actually doing this part-time, and some of them are running multi-million-dollar businesses. And it comes down to how much you invest. Just like people today can have multiple Airbnb properties, and the more they invest, the more properties they buy, potentially there's some economic reward with it, but also there's so much that's so interesting that I think makes it a little bit different from Airbnb that hasn't been figured out, right? So one of the things that we launched last year is a storage provider working group, completely volunteer run for all of our storage providers in every region. And these groups are self-nominated by the community in each area. So our North America working group meets weekly. People just want to talk, they want to figure out better tooling, they want to figure out problems that they can solve together. We're doing meetups for our storage provider communities. Around 50 to 70 people show up every time we have a major conference. They'll have a huge meetup just to discuss what's next, how to bring on incredible enterprise clients. And it's really funny because here we are in Seattle, home of a lot of enterprise cloud, and it's really great to feel the energy of a very scrappy but very seasoned cloud community, really passionate about the promise of the decentralized web and what the security of decentralized storage means. So that's a little bit about how to get started. We have a number of ways to get involved if this is something that you're interested in.
If you are crypto curious and you want to get exposure to mining, go buy a repurposed S9, an old S9, go buy a handshake miner, go buy a helium miner. I don't really care what protocol that
That's
you
a
go
lot of
and
stuff
grab.
to buy.
Yeah, just buy one of them. Go and install this device in your house. You can do it. If it's an S9, take out your washing machine and plug in your S9. Why not? You don't need to wash your clothes anyway. And just get some experience. Go through the process of flashing your own firmware on your S9. Go talk to the communities. Join some Discord groups. Even just tweet. Just tweet that you're setting up your first, S9. You'll get an entire group of miners that are going to rush to support you. Doesn't matter whether it's Bitcoin or it's Helium or it's Handshake or C or any of these other protocols. Just share your experiences, and worst case, if you don't have the money to spend, go offer to intern at one of the mining pools or the mining companies or the protocols. Just get involved.
So you can. I mean, even less than that. How many laptops are out? It's kind of hard to see, really impossible to see from up here. But if you've got a laptop, you could probably turn that thing on and mine just a little bit of coin. I mean, it's going to be like a half of a cent a day. But you can actually go download the software that runs on an S9 and actually see like mining happening. You're not going to make any money, but you can actually. That's like the barrier to entry to mining is you could go turn on your laptop and mine and kind of see what it takes. It's actually not that hard. It's very, very simple. And then once you've understood that a little bit, then yes, you can go get the specialized hardware called an S9, which is like the machine that we used in 2016, and then once you figure that out, you can go get an S19, which is the machine we use today, and then from there, then you're off to the races, and then you can talk to Raymond here about how to buy hundreds of thousands of these machines.
It's 200 now. Yeah, so definitely added. That's great. I think also it's important to know the physical constraints of these things. One, super loud, talking 80 to 90 decibels. So when it gets really cold, you get one of these S9s for $200 off eBay or whatever. You're going to hook up the outflow, the heat side, to your ventilation ductwork, and heat your own house while making Bitcoin at the same time. That's
Brilliant.
the best
It's
way
brilliant.
to learn how hot it gets. And so what do you do when you have 200,000 of these machines, right? That's where it becomes a very interesting question.
Start a sweat lodge.
An S9, so an S9
Hot
uses
yoga.
about 1,500 watts, maybe 1,300 to 1,400 watts. For comparison, that's like as much as your dryer, so maybe even a little bit more. So you can imagine like how much energy that is. An S19 uses 3,500 watts, which you can't even run on regular power. You have to, like you said, you have to plug it into your dryer socket or have like a special plug installed. So like when you go to a facility that has all these Bitcoin miners plugged in, they're all special. It's all pretty much special made for that.
So what you're saying is take out your dryer, sell that, and replace it with a Bitcoin miner to
Yes,
dry
yeah,
clothes.
you don't need dryers anymore. Just plug in your S19.
There we go.
Yeah, you could pay for a dry cleaning then easily.
Yeah,
easily.
yeah.
Use the heat for your dry cleaning. So to finish us off, I want to ask each of you, what innovations in the mining space are you really excited about? So what are some up and coming things in mining that have got you going?
So really, it comes down to energy innovation, right? So the renewable energy revolution is here, and Bitcoin mining is going to be the catalyst for that. I think the integrations with Bitcoin miners in the grid as overall, that's really where the new, like, not only just in our industry, but like the energy industry, which is potentially the largest industry in the world, is headed. And I think that Bitcoin mining is really going to be that catalyst. So even outside of mining itself, it's more so the energy, and that's really where I'm focused and thinking about a lot, is how those two technologies start to mesh.
Yeah, so for Marathon, I really focus on getting our cost per terahash down, and one of those innovations is immersive cooling. So you could buy cost per terahash S19s for between 60 and 70 bucks, maybe a little less today. If you buy an immersive cooling unit and you overclock your miners, we view it as if we're paying $20 or $30 a terahash. So it's as if you're creating miners or terahashes with your existing infrastructure. Because obviously, you look at a 1 megawatt build out, and let's say it's $3 million for the miners, and your infrastructure is 300,000. Let's spend another 200,000 on that, and you can spend less on miners, and your overall cost per capex is going to be a lot less. So that's what we're looking at immersion.
For me, it's home mining. So ASIC innovation and home mining. There's a subsection of companies out there right now that are very concerned about a majority of the Bitcoin hash rate being concentrated into public companies in the US, especially those of us who have lived through China's shutdown of Bitcoin mining. And we are concerned that the same thing may happen one day to the US. It's a lot easier to shut down 6 public mining companies or 12 or however many there are, than it is to say shut down 30 million individual miners across America in everyone's home. And so there is some exciting new research and a lot of innovation over how do we take all of the wasted energy in a home and repurpose that into cryptocurrency mining. And you might scoff at that and say, well, I would never make money. Well, not quite true. You might not make money on your own, but as long as all of that hash rate is going to a pool, and the pool is crafting blocks, you can feasibly compete with a standard S19. So, quite excited about all of the research that's going on there, especially at companies like Block.
Yeah, so I was just at Davos last week, and I think it's really interesting. One of the very exciting areas I am passionate about is getting more policymakers to understand what mining is, what blockchain is, because I think there's a lot more overlap in good versus some of their assumptions given some of the digital literacy gaps. I think there's a huge opportunity from a policy standpoint where, mining or, some of the work in the blockchain space can be subsidized, or there's ways that they can mirror with existing environmental initiatives to really do good for this world that has never been done before. And so I'm really interested in kind of the policy innovations that are at the forefront. It's similar to what you said, some of the ways that we can be green, but also really support all the incredible storage providers and miners that are in this industry today that are adding dollars to the American economy.
All right, Clara, Christy, Raymond, Nick, thank you so much for sharing your experience. And if any of you have any questions about mining or expectations for the future, come by and drinks and just ask them the question.
Yeah.